Yeah, Fred's winding it down. All right, I know of at least one more person that's on their way. We've got a few more signed up for in person. So anyway, they'll trickle in. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for being here today. Welcome. Um, so excited about this class, financial wellness, and we put it in February, scheduled it for February because you know if your ducks are not in a row financially, that can create a lot of stress, and stress is not good for the heart. So, Sarah Evans is here today to help in creating a budget, conquering debt, all those good things or bad things or whatever. Look at it. But she really knows how to break it down and get think. And it's one of those you go first. So Jackie went first. I've already had my first session with her, and it's been phenomenal. So that's something too that is a follow up after the session that Sarah will tell you more about. But we'll go ahead and get started. To the virtual audience, hello. There is a worksheet that Sarah has passed out, but we will get that to you after the session is over. So take lots of notes and everything, and you'll have that to work with. I think that's it. I'm going to go ahead and not take any more time away from you. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah.
Well, thank you. I see a few familiar faces, some new faces, but my name is Sarah. I am the Director of Financial Health with Lister Hill. My role with the credit union is basically I work with ages 5 through 75, and I help people understand the systems that are in place that help us to manage our money. So the last thing I am going to do is tell you how to spend your money. It's up to you how you spend your money. It's your money. People have heard me say it so many times, but it is your money. But it's like playing a game or a sport. If you want to do that well, you have to know the rules. And it's the same with money. Learn the rules, you can play the game better. And I do think of it kind of as a game. You know, you have winners and losers. You play it well, you do better in the game. So it's kind of understanding how everything works. Today, we're going to talk about debt. Now, I know we've talked about debt a lot in the past, but the way that this is structured is I'm actually going to make you guys do some of the work. Hey, Dr. Renfro. I'm going to make you guys do some of the work. You have been given 2 of these sheets. The first one, we're going to work through an exercise today, so you can see how it works. The second one, you can take with you, and you can work through your numbers once you actually see how this works. For those of you that are online, I will email this form to Jackie, and then she will get that out to you. So just pay attention to how this works. If you need to make notes, then please do so. But that way you can have something to follow, do your work at home. In addition to doing this class, what works really, really well is if you are struggling to do budget, if you are struggling with credit rebuilding, if you are struggling with debt payoff. Those are the 3 main things that everybody always has issues with. If you're struggling with any of those, come see me, and I will do a one-on-one session with you, or sessions. Most people, if they're doing one-on-one programming, will do 2 sessions. They'll do one to kind of get everything going, set you on a path. I'm going to tell you what to do. You have to do the work. And then the second part is come back. Because sometimes just having somebody that can look objectively at all of this, rather than you guys are entrenched in whatever you are dealing with. And it may be that your finances are great. You just want to do better. And so that's where I come in and help you with that. So if you have questions as we go along, just ask them, because if you have that question, there is a very good chance that somebody else has the question. Do you have a chat on with this? You do. So if there are questions that come in via chat, then just let me know as well. Specifically what we're going to talk about today, I'm going to walk you through how debt payoff actually works. If you understand how it works, you'll understand why it isn't working for you necessarily. I'm going to give you the wake-up call that you can apply to your finances. And I call it a wake-up call because it is a wake-up call. It can be quite frightening. I'm going to talk a little bit about debt strategies, how to plan and avoid the debt cycle, which is something that basically people get into debt and they stay into debt and they can't get rid of the debt, and then they get rid of the debt and then they just get back into the debt again. Show you about some ratios that you need to keep an eye on, and then I will give you a final warning as well. So we're going to get cracking. I was told, I said that in a classroom the other day, and apparently it has a whole different connotation with the younger generation. So I need to stop saying that. Very English thing to say, but apparently I need to stop saying that. So my apologies if it insulted you in any way. So the number one thing is debt is expensive. Okay. If you put anything on a credit card, you're borrowing money. If you borrow money, obviously you are borrowing money. Unless you're borrowing off your great aunt Josephine, there's a good chance you're going to be paying it back with interest. You pay for the privilege of borrowing money. The APR, what we call it, which is the annual percentage rate, is the indicator of your debt. The higher the interest rate, the higher the APR, the more expensive your debt is. So APR of 1%, lovely. APR of 32%, not so lovely, and credit cards often have APRs of 32%. So we're going to work out, just to show you an example. Whoops. If you owe $10,000 on a credit card, and that credit card has an APR of 32%, assuming you don't change that balance, because I like easy math, assuming nothing changes, you will pay $3,200 every year for the privilege of borrowing that money. $3,200. That is a lot of money. Okay. Just to manage the interest, not even paying the debt down, you will need to pay $267 a month. $267 a month just to pay off the interest. If you pay $350 in the first month, you are only reducing the balance by $83. Okay. You've paid $350 only to pay off $83. So debt is expensive. So how does that actually work? Well, in this case, we borrowed $1,000, debt of 15% APR. Okay. Month one, whoops, sorry. I'm trying to, okay, let me move this out of the way. Oh, I'm going to count that again. Okay, so you've got $1,000 of debt, you're paying at 15 APR. Month one, if you pay $12.50 in interest, which is 15%, okay, because we've got to figure out how much our interest is, paying $12.50 in interest, 15% of ATR, $150 divided by 150, it's 150 divided by 12 months. That's how we get the $12.50. Make sense? So if you make a payment of $50, you are only reducing your debt by $37.50. Your balance started at $1,000 because of the interest. Your balance is now $962.50. So that's where it is at the end of month one. So in the start of month two, you're at $962.50. Month two, you're going to pay $12.03 in interest. Our balance is the 962. You're going to pay 15% of the 962, which is 144.38 for the whole year, but we have to divide it by 12 months. So that's going to give us our 1203. Okay. So now we're still going to make $50, but this time we're using $37.97 of that $50 to pay it off. So the amount that we're using, the amount that we're paying off is increasing slightly. But in 2 months, you paid $100. You've only reduced your balance by $75.47. So this is just on $1,000 with 15% APR. That's just on $1,000. But that's how it works. So you might think that you're paying off a lot, but so much of that is interest. So you're reducing the debt just by a small amount, and then in month two, you're paying on a slightly less amount, but you're not paying on the total debt minus what you've paid. It's not the way it works. That's why it's so difficult to pay it off. Any questions about how the pay down actually works? No? Okay. So how do we figure out what we owe and what the percentage rates are? Many of you have heard me talk about credit reports a lot. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about is credit and credit reports. But the credit report will give you a list of all of your accounts, what the balances are, and what the interest rates are. So in order to start to look at our debt, what have we got to know? We've got to know how much we're paying, what our percentage rate are. and what our current balance is, which in this case is 924. Okay, we've got to know those things. Now, what you have to remember is your outstanding balances that are listed on your credit report are not necessarily going to be in real time. So if you have made a payment yesterday and you pull your credit report today, there is often up to a 6-week lag on it. But what is important is that it's going to give you your all of what you owe and all of your interest rates. And it's the interest rates a lot of the time people struggle on. They kind of know how much they owe, but they have no idea how much that's actually costing them. What I'm giving you now, and again, for those online, I'll make sure you get one of these. What I'm giving you now is a step-by-step guide of exactly how to check your credit report, how to pull your credit report. It will take you, it will take you about 10 minutes to do this. Whoopsie. It will take you about 10 minutes to do this. Each of the credit bureaus will give you a free credit report every year. So that basically means that if you're smart about it, you could start with Experian today. It's close to the 1st of February. 4 months later, do Equifax. 4 months later, do TransUnion. This time next year, you're back to whichever the first one was that I told you. Okay. One free credit report every year. So 3 bureaus, do it every 4 months. It will take you about 10 minutes. Here's the thing. They'll all look a little bit different, but they're all going to give you your accounts and the interest rates. The other thing that you need to know is when you check your credit report, you are not actually asking to borrow money. Consequently, it is classified as what we call a soft pull. That means that it will show on your credit report, but it will not affect your credit score. And that credit score is that 3-digit number that we all get hung up about. Okay, your credit score is going to show you what's on there. When you are checking your accounts, when you're checking your credit report, it is also possible that you may find accounts on there that you know nothing about. So you're working hard to pay off all of your debts while somebody else has established another debt on your behalf, which is affecting your credit score and dragging your credit score down. So it's really important whenever you start to look at debt that you know exactly what is on your credit report, not just because this is an easy way of finding out all of your interest rates, but you want to check that nothing else is impacting your credit that you don't know about, okay? I think of this as going to the dentist. You know, go to the dentist every 6 months. If there's not a problem, fine, you carry on, you're good. But a bit like going to the dentist, if there is a problem with your credit, it also won't go away. It will get worse. Okay. Also included in this little booklet is what to do if you find a problem with your credit report and what you do if you find a mistake. If you find a mistake, that's pretty straightforward. If you do find a problem, something on there that you know nothing about, you can reach out to me as well. Okay, but it is listed what you do in that. Any questions about the credit reports? Yes, ma'am.
Sure. It's below that, if you find a mistake on the credit
Uh-huh.
report, the column that says what helps your credit.
Yeah, and what hurts your credit?
Pay off credit card balances immediately using maximum of 30%
Yes.
credit limit.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the rules with credit, there are a number of different rules, and I think some of you have done the credit class, as we call it. One of the rules with credit is that when it comes to your credit cards, you should not use more than 30% of the available limit. Now, this becomes very important, not just only as you're spending, but as you start to pay off debt and you're getting really hot on responsibility, you have to understand how this system works. I'll give you an example. If I have 2 credit cards, each credit card has a limit of $5,000. So my limit, my overall limit, $10,000. I'm using this because I like easy math. So if I can put 30% maximum, if I can use 30%, I can use $3,000 without it affecting my credit score. If I go over that $3,000, over that 30%, it will start to drag my credit score down. Now, this is how it works in real life. So I'm trucking along, I got 1,500, and because we're doing easy math, I'm assuming that I can pay everything off every month and everything is golden. But what happens in real life is that the credit cards are in competition with each other. and they both want my business. So I get a nice offer from this one saying, we'll give you 2% cash back every time you swipe our credit card. Or now you can also support UNA, that's another story. But we'll give you 2% cash back. So I'll take 2% cash back all day long. So I now stop using this card and I just use this card. My spend stays the same, my payoff stays the same, but I've now got $3,000 on this one and nothing on this one. Now, in the big picture of everything, I'm actually still okay because I've got 30% of my available credit cards. You have to protect yourself. You don't want to get too close to the max, and you also don't want to max out and then open another one. That's not the way it works. But in the real world, as you start to think about protecting your credit and building your credit and all of these, exciting topics, because we're not using this card, what is our inclination? If we're not using something, especially with something like credit, what is our tendency? What do we think we should do? Close it, okay? And that's what we do as humans, especially in this world of trying to, navigate credit. So we close this account. Now, my spend hasn't changed, my payoff hasn't changed, but I have voluntarily removed $5,000 of available credit. I've still got $3,000 on this card, but I've only got 5,000 available. My ratio has just shot up to 60%. So in trying to be responsible, I've just shot myself in the foot. So the rule, I'm not saying have lots of credit cards, but understand how that system works so that if you are in that position, you can look at the numbers and say, hey, is this going to help me or hurt me? Now, if I had 15,000 available on this one and this one was 3,000, closing this account really wouldn't have any impact. Okay, but you've got to look at the numbers and see what works for you. In addition, and I'll use my example, so this was my Lister Hill 2% cashback card. This was the credit card that I started with that has now $17,500 worth of available credit. Now, I could never handle that kind of debt. I couldn't. But I started using my 2% cashback card. Understanding the system, I did not close this one because I'm using this $17,500 of available credit to support my credit score. In addition, this card is 20-something years old. So I've got all of this wonderful credit history. If I close that card, there goes a lot of the credit history, which again is propping up the credit score. So great question. I hope I didn't bore everybody with the thing, but it is important that you understand the why with this. Okay, so this is how to pull your credit report. This is why it's important. If you have any problems, let me know. You are checking for mistakes, inaccuracy, and larger problems. The larger problems are anything that you don't know about on the credit report. Accounts that you don't know about, addresses that you don't know about. If you put an employment record in there for Key West, Florida, and it is not the parent company of who you're working for, that's a problem because somehow your social security number is tied with an address in Key West, Florida. So look out for those because they can be signs of identity theft. So let's get to the good stuff. This is where you'll go, no, you just want to cry. This is where this sheet comes into play. Okay, we're going to work an example, but you have a second sheet. You know how to pull your debts. You know how to find your interest rates. The second sheet is for you to work with your specifics. I'm not going to have you do your specifics now because that's very private. So we're going to look at not an abnormal situation to what I see with debt. You got a Lister Hill credit card. You got a balance of $4,500 on it. That's how much you owe. The interest rate is 18%. You got a Discover credit card. They're usually a little bit higher, 28%. You've got $9,000 on it. And you got a store credit card of 32%. Again, not abnormal for a store credit card to be in the region of 30 to 40%. So if you write those numbers down in the My Credit Card Debt, just write those down because this is going to help you repeat it for your examples. In addition, you've got a car loan. You've got $18,500 on the car. You're paying 9% for the car loan. Your mortgage is at 3%. This is assuming, of course, that you locked in or refinanced 3 or 4 years ago. Now, of course, the mortgage rates are a little bit higher, but this is realistic for a lot of homeowners that either bought or refinanced. And then you've got student loan at 15,000. Now, the 4%, and some of the examples I work at around 5% on student loans. They can vary, and some are going to be on the private market. So I've kind of just evened that out. And many of you may not have student debt, but this is the way that you structure this. So you start with all of your outstanding debts and the percentage rate that you are paying. Okay? This is where it gets really fun. This is where, when I'm working with people on a one-on-one basis, they go like this. And it is the wake-up call. What you are seeing in red is how much that debt is costing this person in this example. Now, if you've got debt sitting around that amount, this is going to be pretty close to home. If you've got less debt, then this is going to be higher. If you've got more debt, this is going to be lower. But that Lister Hill credit card at $4,500 at 18%, you're paying $810 a year in debt. Discover card, you're paying $2,520 in interest. Store credit card, $1,280 in interest. On the car loan, assuming the balances are at this point, because obviously with these you're on fixed payments, so the money is coming down, $1,665 in interest, $4,500 in interest on the mortgage, student loan $600 in interest. So if you add up what you are paying in interest on a month, on an annual basis, just in the credit card debt, you're paying $4,610 every year in interest for the privilege of having the stress of being in this kind of debt. That means just to handle the interest, you're paying $385 per month in interest. On the good debt side, this is what we call the good debt, houses, cars, student loans, that kind of stuff. You're paying $6,765 every year in interest, $564 a month. So you're paying nearly $900 a month out of your hard-earned money to somebody else. You're not paying anything off. You're paying my Christmas bonus. You're paying for somebody else to go to the Caribbean. Because this is how people make money. This is one of the main ways that banks, credit unions, financial institutions, is how they make money. They make money on loans. But you're paying it. Okay? Now, that's kind of scary, right? And when you do it for your numbers and you see how much it is costing you, if that doesn't wake you up and say, I have got to change this situation, nothing's going to. Okay? It's your money. Said at the beginning, it's your money. It's up to you how you spend it. But I would much rather spend this buying a plane ticket than you guys buying me a plane ticket. It's kind of how it is. Okay? So does everybody understand how you get these numbers? Basically, you take this, times it by 18%, this times it by 9%, this times it by 28%, this times it by 32%, and that gives you your annual rate. You just divide the annual by 12 months because obviously you're paying the interest, you pay on a monthly basis. Now, it's not precise because obviously in this case you are paying down some of this debt, but you saw how that debt payoff works. And there are all kinds of different debt calculators that you can work with. But does everybody understand that principle? Okay. Horrible.
Hey, Sarah, can you explain, so if it's January
Yes.
and we'll just go with that first one and I can't see exactly what.
The credit card or the car loan?
4,500.
Yes.
Okay, so with the APR calculation, is it gonna be a little bit lower or are you January gonna pay the same interest? It's gonna.
If you are paying more, so this number is just to pay the interest. So in this one, in this case, if you, let's say you pay $500 a month, you're now paying, well, $115 divided by 3, let's call it $35. $35 off that $35 off that, $35 off that. So the balance is going to come down a little bit if you're paying more than just the interest each month, because you pay your credit card bills each month. The problem is with working an example like this, I've got to try and keep it as simple as I can rather than bringing the debt down. This number is just the interest. So you are, if you're just doing this, you're not changing this at all.
So when that says minimum payment due, are you only
Wait.
paying interest on
The minimum payment due is usually as low as 1% of the loan plus interest. Okay, that is usually what the minimum is. Some will do 5% plus the interest, but that's why I say don't do what they tell you. Don't pay the minimum, because a minimum payment can be, thank you, Dr. Renfro, you segued me beautifully. A minimum payment can be as low as 1% of the principal plus the interest on the balance of the loan. So if you're making the minimum payments, by default, you're going to have a minimum of 100 payments, because 1% is 1/100, okay? Now, let's look at how this works. This is on a credit card, and I've taken an iPhone of $1,200 because that's kind of what they are. In this case, I've put a new iPhone onto the credit card. It's got a rate of 18.9%, which is relatively low in the field of credit cards. I mean, as I said, I've seen up to 40%. So in this case, we've taken 1% plus the interest would be $31 for the first month, okay? If you paid $31 every month, which of course you're now paying an increasing or a decreasing amount of interest. If you paid $31 every month, so taking that first month's minimum and continuing it through, it would take you 61 months. Now, if you only paid the minimum every month, it would still go up to 100, but because you are paying the loan down a little bit, but I've kept the payment the same, each month, relatively you pay off a little bit more of the principal. So in this case, it would take you 61 months to pay that phone off. It will cost you $1,866. Your cost of borrowing is $665. So here's the thing, when you are looking at borrowing for anything, whether it's car, putting something on the credit card, you cannot look at the sticker price. The sticker price is $1,200. That's what the dealer gets. You get your $1,200 phone, but you have paid $1,866 for it. So you've got to look at things in terms of how much is this actually costing me rather than what is my sticker price. Now let's take it a step further, because I've just told you don't do what they tell you to do and pay the minimum. Don't pay what they tell you to pay. So instead of paying our $31 a month, we're going to pay $65 a month, so an extra $34, which, let's face it, most of you probably spend on coffee. Yep. Am I wrong? No. My office is next to Starbucks. So in this case, this is our principal, this is our interest. Now, just paying that extra every month, we switch to this is our proportion that we're paying off on the loan, and this is how much we're paying in interest. And in this case, we now pay it off in 22 months. We're only paying $228 to borrow the money. But what makes this situation even healthier is that now we've paid it off nearly 40 months sooner, over 3 years sooner. So that's 3 years of having an extra $65 in our budget that we can put to something else. Whereas here, we're just paying this for like ever. We never get that money back. And by the time we're there, we need a new phone anyway, because they're all defunct and they don't last long enough. And then they tell you don't have enough memory because AI is taking up all the space and all the rest of it. But don't pay the minimum. Even if you can just pay $5 or $10 more, this makes a big difference. So any questions about that? No? Okay. So when it comes to paying off debt, there are two main strategies. Don't worry, we're going to get back to that example in a minute. I told you I'm going to make you work. When it comes to paying off debt, there are two main strategies. The first one is the snowball method. So we have our list, right? You have your list of all of your debts, all of the percentage rates, all of the balances. You've got that. The first one is that when you come to the end of, all of your budgeting, You take any extra money and you apply it to the smallest balance. The advantage with this is you get a huge pat on the shoulder really, really fast. You're like, yes, I did it. I paid off $300. Now that's a huge achievement. And that is very, very motivating. On paper, the method that is better for debt is this one, which is called the avalanche method. And with this one, you go back to your list and you say the highest percentage is costing me the most amount of money because that's where I'm paying the most amount of money. That's where I'm paying the highest interest. So with this method, you start tackling the most expensive debt first. Now, this one will save you more money in the long run. The problem with this one is that you don't get that, woohoo, I'm great, I rock, I paid off a debt. Whichever one you choose, you must pay at least the minimum on every single debt. Remember, this is a strategy. We know that we don't want to pay the minimum, but you've got to have a strategy for how you're going to tackle this. Okay, what are you going to concentrate? Not, I'm going to pay off the debt. What are you going to tackle first? This one on paper saves you more money. This one gives you the woohoo. Which one's the best? Well, to be honest with you, that's up to you. It is purely based on personal choice and personal circumstance. Whichever one works for you is the best strategy. If you need that little woohoo, then Snowball's going to work. If you just want to save as much money as possible over the next 5 years, Avalanche is going to be the best. But if you choose Avalanche and you can't stick to it, that's a pretty useless strategy. Okay? This is where having somebody to help you comes in. Okay? Doesn't matter which strategy you choose, sometimes you need help figuring out that strategy. It comes down to planning. You've got to plan. I know how to lose weight. I know how to do it. And I can talk to you till I'm blue in the face about having to lose weight. But unless I actually sit down and plan my meals and plan my gym workouts and plan all of that, is it going to happen? No. I'm going to carry on having Cheez-Its and having some ice cream and eating too much and not getting up to go to the gym. I've got to have that plan in place. Getting assistance is great. Sometimes you need that person that will hold you accountable until you create the habits that are now in place that you are now comfortable enough to hold yourself accountable. Okay? But this is probably the most important thing. You've got to do it. And you've got to stick to the plan. You have to. Because if you don't, you're just dreaming. Debt is really uncomfortable. Nobody wants to look at these numbers and say, I'm paying $500, $600 every month just in interest. Nobody wants that. That is uncomfortable. That's why I walk you through this exercise. And I do this with people all the time, not to make them squirm, but kind of to make them squirm too, because you've got to get to the reality in order to be motivated enough to stick to the plan. Because sometimes that plan is making sacrifices. It means, yeah, no coffee. It means you can only go out with your friends once a month or maybe twice a month, depending on the situation. Okay? You've got to go through the follow through. I've worked with a number of different people, and it's not fast. It's the turtle and hare story. The turtle wins the race because you've just got to stick to the plan and keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. Which is why I am a fan of that snowball method, because it makes it easier to stick to that plan. Okay? So plan, get assistance and follow through. Now, when it comes to figuring out how all of this works, it's all fine and well saying, yeah, you know, this is great. You've got to get down to the basics. And when I say get down to the basics, I mean, how much money have you got coming in and how much money are you spending? When it comes to handling a budget, this is the simplest thing in the world. There are only 2 ways to balance a budget. Only 2 ways. It's not complicated. You either reduce expenses or you increase income. There are no other ways to do it. Okay? Once you've figured out what your cash flow is, guess what? You've got to set a budget. Now, the word budget is a horrible word. I hate the word budget because to me, budget suggests not spending money. And yeah, when you're going to have to get out of debt, you got to not spend some money somewhere. But that concept is very sticky for me. I prefer to think of it as a spending plan. Plan how you are going to allocate every single dollar that you have. And I do mean every single dollar. Because then you are empowered to maximize the value that you are getting for every single dollar. Okay. I'll use the example of my lovely friends, the vending machines. Who uses vending machines? I know you all do. Okay. How much do you normally put in a vending machine? $2 or $3. It's only $2 or $3, right? Doesn't matter. Well, let's take that $2 because I like $2. It's easier math. $2. If you put $2 into the vending machine every day, and we're not going to count weekends, give me some leeway. So $2 every day, it's $10 a week. That's $40 a month. Guess what? That's $500 in a year on that vending machine. And remember, I wasn't going to tell you how to spend your money. It's your money. If you want to spend $500 in the vending machine and you have it, that's fine. But $500 is also going to go a long way to paying off debt. Okay. So you have to set a budget and stick to it. If you need help setting a budget, I can help you with that. You need to include into your budget an allocation of funds that includes debt payoff. That means you are taking money out of the vending machine fund, out of the Starbucks fund, and instead of having fun with it, you are putting it into this bucket as part of your budget, the debt payoff. Okay. Now, which debt is going to go to? That's going to come down to your strategy. You have to increase income. Sometimes that means getting a second job. I'm assuming by the time you get to this point, you have reduced the expenses and you've cut out the vending machine and you've cut out the Starbucks, you cut out things like that. Increase your income is a great way of paying off debt. But here's the trick. Don't increase your income and then say, I can go out with my friends once a week now. And that's what people do, is they increase their income and now they think, oh, I've got some cash. But the whole point of increasing the income is to pay off the debt. Okay? So when you increase the income, you have got to allocate that entire bucket, the entire bucket, into paying off that debt. Okay? The only leeway that I will give you is to put some of it into emergency savings. Now, for a lot of people, they get into debt in the first place because they don't have emergency savings. Something happens and you don't have the money to pay for it. Life. We all know how expensive life is, and COVID was a great example of that. Okay? So, one of the main causes of debt is exactly that. In January of 2022, this is post-COVID, 56% of Americans could not cover a $1,000 emergency without going into debt. This is post-COVID. Pre-COVID, it was in the 70s. I think it was 73% at one point, which is horrifying. Now, COVID did us a big service, but unfortunately, well, fortunately, COVID was 5-6 years ago now. People are forgetting. And we're starting to see those savings go down again because it's more fun, especially with the cost of everything. It's more fun to not think about those savings. It is recommended to have 3 to 6 months of basic living expenses saved to cover an emergency. So yes, paying off this debt is important, but the last thing you want to do is clear the debt and then have something happen and you're right back in debt again. So that's why I say there is some leeway in what you're going to do with extra income, because you want to make sure that you are starting also to build an emergency savings fund. Because of course that cycle of debt is you clear the debt, then something happens and you're right back in debt again because you don't have the emergency savings to cover it. Okay. So you want to have 3 to 6 months of basic living expenses. And when we say basic, it's like, you know, your housing, your car payment, your food, not the going out with your friends and all the other things. Really get down to basics. That's what you need. And they say 3 to 6 months because realistically it can take that long to find another job if you lose your job. Okay. So how do we do it? Well, unplanned expenses cause the problems. So we've got to save for 3 to 6 months. You want to set those savings goals. Okay, figure out what your 3 to 6 months is. Are you going to save for 3 months? Are you going to save for 6 months? How much do I need to allocate into my budget in order to go get to that point? That is a savings goal. You want to automate your savings. Set it up so every portion of every single of your paycheck goes directly into your savings account. Savings is a habit. If at this point, especially if you're paying off debt, if at this point you can only put $1 into your savings account, that is okay. But you are establishing the habit of committing to doing $1 every single paycheck. As you get more financially stable, as you get used to doing this, you increase it to $5, $10, $40, $50. Okay? But make it a habit. And guess what? If you never see it, you don't miss it. But you're really going to appreciate it when something happens. You know, you have a copay, can come out of that. And car breaks down, it can come out of that. Okay? Make a budget, cut expenses. We've already talking about this. Guess what time of year it is? What do we do with our tax refunds? We blow them. We're like, bonus money. No. Use that. Remember, it's the plan how you're going to spend your money so that you get the most amount of value out of everything. Think about how expensive that debt is. Nice big chunk of change is going to pay off a lot of that debt, and it's going to save you a lot of money. If you get a pay raise, I don't know when your pay raises come through, but if you get a pay raise, don't go, woohoo, I got a pay raise. Think, okay, I'd be managing on this. Set aside that pay raise, view it as extra income, as if you were working another job, and put that money directly into paying off that debt. Okay, don't take that pay raise and pat yourself on the back. Pat yourself on the back when you've paid off some of the debt. And then, of course, set new goals. Now, if you have paid off that debt, or if you're using the snowball and you need to change your strategy, these are new goals. Once you've paid everything off, set a new savings bucket. You've got an emergency savings fund. Now you can start a vacation fund. Now you can start the buying a house fund. Now you can start the buy a Maserati fund. It's your money, but be strategic about it and set the new goals. Okay, so easy, right? Let's go back to our example. So this is where we're at. Everybody got that, right? This is where we're going to take it. We've now got to have a strategy for how we're going to pay everything off. So our minimum payment, assuming we're going to pay 1%, our minimum payment for this budget purpose, which you're going to see on the back, is going to be $560 a month, where you've got your credit card bill. Or is it? Minimum credit card payments is $560 per month. That's the minimum. Okay, that is under fixed expenses, because that's not going to change. You've got to pay the minimum, at least the minimum. You've then got additional numbers for your mortgages, your car loan, your car loan, your mortgage, and your student loan. These are fixed, so they're not actually going to change. So you can put those in to these slots as well. Everybody with me so far? Everyone got them? Okay. These are your other numbers that you need to work this out. Your net income is $3,500. Okay. You've also got car insurance for $100, your phone bill's $100, your utilities is $250. I've given you $250 to spend that you need to allocate for gas. So your goal debt. Your goal is to allocate the rest of your money. You still got to have gas. Some of you may have to have medications. Are you going to have hobbies? But notice, under your fixed expenses, I have also included emergency fund. Our goal is 10% of your net income to go into savings. So if your net income is 3,500, the goal is to put 350 into the emergency fund. And then I am requiring you to put into your fixed expenses additional debt payoff. You cannot fill the additional debt payoff until you figure out also how much money you're going to make that you're going to spend on food and other things that you might need. These two numbers here, there is no right or wrong answer. But what you've got to do is you've got all of your debts on the front, that's here, is you want to go through and allocate that money to trying to pay off more debt. Okay, I'm going to give you about 3-4 minutes just to play around with the numbers so that if you have questions, you can ask them, because this is an exercise that you can do on your own with your own debt. And as I say, if you don't have debt, fantastic. Make sure you avoid it, because hopefully this will scare the bejeebers out of you that you don't want to get into debt. Okay. Again, it's your money. You can pay interest and I can go on vacation, or you can save it and you can go on vacation. That's kind of how it is. Let me know if you have questions. There's no right or wrong answer. Hello, online.
I'm just curious, is 9% a typical car loan now?
They vary. Rates have definitely come down a little bit now, and it depends on where your credit is as well. Some car loans are going to come in around 6%. Some you may get a little bit lower. A lot of dealers are offering really good deals right now because they need to sell cars. So they're kind of undercutting themselves. They make money on the car and the financing if they do the financing rather than going through a credit union or a bank. The one thing I will tell you though is if you are in the car market, get pre-approved with whoever your financial institution is before you go car shopping. It doesn't mean that you have to use that, but you've got a really good guideline with where you want to be at. At the end of 2024, I bought a new car. If I financed through the dealer, I got 0% financing because car dealers were really needing shift deals. And of course, last 2 weeks of the month, you're going to get the best deals. So that was great. If I had financed it with Lister Hill, it was going to cost me like 5.5%, which would have been stupid. I hate to say Lister Hill no, but you know, I'm going to get the best deal for me. So if you don't have great credit, then you could be looking 12.5% for a car as well. So 9% is kind of a sweet spot, for an example.
What is the average mortgage?
That also has come down a bit. Actually, it's come down in the last 2-3 weeks. So we're well under 6% now. At one point we were in excess of that. Honestly, I haven't looked in the last couple of weeks, but it's definitely coming down. That being said, and this is my personal opinion, I don't know if we'll ever get back, certainly not in the foreseeable future, to the 2.85s and that kind of rate. That was an artificial rate that, you know, it was just crazy times, but maybe we will. My personal opinion is that we'll probably see a settling of around 4 or 5%. But at the same time, if you have the opportunity to buy a house and the mortgage rate is at 6%, but you can get into the house, you can always refinance if the rates do come down as well. So those are bigger questions. But yeah, interest rates are very variable, and your credit is a huge dictator on that. And I'm going to talk about something else in just a minute. Okay, does anybody have any questions about this? There is no right or wrong answer. And, you know, if you get to this point and you're just like, I don't know where to go, then you can come to me. If you don't even want to get to this point on your own, you want help right from the beginning, come to me. But some people like to work this kind of information out on their own. So a couple of other things you need to know, and you can work these numbers, you can use the examples, or you can use your own numbers. Talking of interest rates, your credit score is very important. But here's the thing, I've worked with people that have actually had fairly decent credit scores, but they can't qualify for a loan because they're paying off so much debt. Their debt to income ratio is actually way too high. The debt to income ratio is basically how much money do I make and how much debt am I carrying. So somebody that's got a lot of debt and they're paying it off and they continue to pay it off, there's a good chance their credit score is actually somewhat decent. They're barely keeping their heads above the water, but they're not going to get approved for a credit loan, for more credit, because what lenders are also looking at is, can you pay this new debt off? If you're already paying $800 a month in interest and your income is $3,500 a month, there's a good chance you really cannot afford to be taking on any more debt because you cannot pay it off. Basically, you take your monthly debt payments and you divide it by your monthly gross. Now, this is one of the few examples where they actually use gross. I don't really know why they use gross, but they do. This is the number. So you take your debt payments, divide it by your gross, and that will give you your debt to income ratio. 35% or less, you're golden. You're in good shape. Okay, now you've got to have the credit score to go along with it, but as long as you've got the credit score, even if you don't have, if you have a less than perfect credit score, your debt to income ratio is low, and maybe you're younger, we recognize that you're building. 36 to 41% is okay, you're doing okay. Maybe you've just bought a house, or maybe you just bought a car, but you know, it's kind of like, yeah, we're probably going to approve you, but we're going to have some conversations about it. 42 to 49, you're unlikely to be qualifying for new credit lines unless you can prove that you are actively reducing the debt by a lot on a regular basis. The other thing with that kind of debt to income ratio, you're probably going to get a higher interest rate because interest rates are based on risk. If we think you are likely to be defaulting and struggling, we're going to give you a higher interest rate because it's a higher risk for us. You're probably not going to qualify for an unsecured loan if you want to go on the trip of a lifetime. But if you're getting a car, we know at least we can take the car back, right? But you're going to pay a lot of money for it. 50% or more, yeah, you're in that category if you're struggling. So you can do your debt to income ratios and actually define your debt situation. And that's kind of another little wake up call. But don't just be riding in going, hey, I got a credit score of 780. My debt to income ratio is 42%. Yeah, you're going to be kind of battling two sides. Yes, sir. The what score? It's a Beacon score. Oh, the credit score is a 3-digit score. There are different bureaus that will give it. The most common one is the FICO score. Okay, so that's the credit score. Yeah, I don't know what the Beacon is. I'll look it up. So your credit scores, your credit reports and credit scores are given by different organizations. Okay. Here's the warning. When you are in debt, when you need money, payday loans prey on people that need money. Hopefully you are never quite in that situation. But this is the way payday loans work. They actually operate outside of the general financial institution world. They have different rules and regulations. Fairly typical for payday loans is $15 on every 100 that you borrow. Problem is that's over 2 weeks. So they will often advertise $15 on 100 on every 100, which is basically 15% over 2 weeks. The average payday loan has an APR of 391%. Go to places like Texas, border towns, you're looking at about 600%. But they get away with it because of the way that they advertise it. They do not advertise an APR. So when you are looking at costs of payday loans, you are not comparing apples to apples. You know, if you think, okay, it's 15%, well, I could probably get 12% at the bank, but that's going to be a hassle. I got to qualify for everything. You're not comparing apples for apples because they may be advertising 15%, but times 2 weeks, 15% over 2 weeks, times 15 by 26, that is the equivalent APR. That is why people get into so much trouble with them because they cannot pay it off and the interest is accumulating so fast. If you're paying $15 on every 100, you've only got a after 4 rotations, you've already doubled the amount that you owe by the time because of course you're paying the interest on the interest as well. They are usually presented on a 2-week basis. Avoid these if at all possible. I use this as a warning because I know our experience shows, and we go down to Pilgrims every week, part of the onboarding down there. And I was talking to one guy about credit, and he was so excited because he was that day going to pay off his loan. I was like, congratulations, this is great. And then when I started talking to him and we did the math, he'd actually paid his loan off twice. And it turned out that it was a payday loan. And yes, we would have been able to help him, and he'd have paid, I think the loan was $225, and he ended up paying just over $500 on it. Okay. Avoid these if at all possible. People just don't understand how they work, and that's why people get onto them. This is a QR code that will take you to Bonsai, which is an online learning platform. We pay for it so everybody can use it for free. If you take a photo of this, when you get onto Bonsai, you can type in debt payoff calculator, and you can manipulate a lot of the data that we've been playing around with here. You can do it on your own debt. You can put in the interest rate. You can put in your balance, and then you can see how quickly you will pay off. Let's say you've got $3,000. Let's say the minimum is $100. You'll see how quickly you can pay it off if you add an extra $50. So you can play around with the numbers. So if you want to take a photo of that, it is free. It is also completely anonymous. You don't have to put in any data. If you end up doing some of the coaching classes, they might ask you for the email. It's a back office function that goes to me. I've never even looked at it, so that's just not why we use it. But this will help you manipulate a lot of the data as well, so you can figure out your best scenario. I'll leave that up. Does anybody have any questions? Hopefully this has been useful, even if it's just to widen your eyes about how expensive debt is. And that's the number one thing people just don't realize. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
And so would it be better just like 40-hour week and not average?
It depends on your circumstances. If you are in a debt situation, then do your budget off the regular week, because then that's the guarantee, and then any additional money can go into debt payoff. If you are trying to budget for particular things, then you might need to look at the bigger picture. But if you can budget off just the regular working week, then anything else can go into the emergency savings or to the debt payoff. It's always nice to have more money rather than be short. So go on what you know is the guarantee. Okay, does that help? Okay. But personal circumstances can dictate a lot of that. But yeah, I mean, debt is expensive. It's as simple as that. So in summary, debt's expensive. If you want to eliminate it, you can do. It does take a concerted effort, but you will save a huge amount of money and you will get out of it. And your finances will actually be so much stronger than if you don't. I mean, when I work with students that go through this, they are graduating in such a great space because they know what they're doing. It's almost like they've fallen, they've picked themselves up and they've learned. Whereas the ones coming out with not having gone through this, they're just like, oh, I'll get a new car, because they don't understand. Emergency savings fund is going to be key. That's why I say that one disclaimer of where you put your money, put extra into the emergency savings fund, because that's going to prevent you from going into the debt cycle. You don't want to go back. Once you get out of debt, you don't want to go back into it. So my contact information is on the front of this one. It's also at the bottom of your sheet. If you need to reach out to me, please do. If you want to set up a one-on-one, my services are completely free, and I don't care where you bank. I don't. I mean, if you bank with Regions and you need help, come and see me. But my office is based in the Commons. If you want to see me and you feel uncomfortable meeting on campus, that's not a problem. We can go and have coffee somewhere. There are lots of places that we can go and we can hide, or I can even meet you at one of the Lister Hill branches. Lots of different options. But if you want to go through this and come up with a strategy specifically for you, then I am very happy to do that and meet on a one-on-one basis. I do it fairly frequently. And don't ever feel the stigma, because I guarantee you will walk around campus and you are surrounded by people that are struggling. And we've created this society where we're all trying to keep up with each other, and we're all just trying to keep up with the debt. and we see it on the back end in the financial side. But please, if you're struggling, if you know, there's always a way out. There's always a way that we can figure out that way forward, and you'll be so much better off for it. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to hang out for a little bit or come and see me. But thank you, Jackie, for allowing me to come today. I really appreciate it. Oh, you guys are always so nice. Oh, I get a present.
Because you're such a runner, you
Oh.
need a neck fan. Up, not like
Oh, this is awesome.
It's a neck fan. It charges.
This will be really good in the garden.
Oh,
For my gardening.
there you go. There
Thank you
go.
so
Absolutely.
much. Thank you.
Thank
But-
you.
but
Thanks
yeah.
everybody for coming. And we got a little survey. Give us some feedback and tell us about more topics. And next week is the cooking demo. Now we are, let's see, I think we have one cancellation. So if you are signed up and you can't attend, you know that you can't attend, go ahead and withdraw your or cancel your reservation, because we do have others who may want to attend, and we are planning on swinging. So y'all do that, and we'll be meeting out there at the Commons area. Well, y'all will be meeting, we'll already be over here in room, but on the Commons area, out parking lot, and kind of going before the fountain, and you can't drive anymore there. But that's where the shuttle will be. 11:45 or 11:45. All right, thanks everybody. Thanks.